Monday, and we bring on guests, we show short videos, and we try to provide information that is useful, and we try to counter the the fake news or the misinformation and the disinformation that major networks, cable stations bring to you, that the conspiracy theories bring to you. And what we really want to do here is be a place where you can get reliable information so you can make decisions in your daily life. And, so we could survive all the economic, political, and health problems that are plaguing the world today. Now, again, this is the People's TV, and I'm Brother Mark. I'm one of the co-hosts. This show is produced by the People-Pueblo Party. You could probably see the logo that way, in that corner right there, People-Pueblo Party. And we're sponsored by the People's Health Project Incorporated, which is my small business. After my heart attack in 2018, I started a business to help folks who suffer from heart conditions so that whatever worked with me, I could share it with people. I'm not a doctor, but I did work in a hospital for 9 years. I was a health educator, and my wife is a physician assistant. So, we try to help folks. We highly recommend certain books for folks, and certain, we go grocery shopping. We help people cook healthier food, try to live a healthier life. And so my business, the People's Health Project Incorporated, has provided the software and the hardware for us to be able to produce this show, the People's TV, for the People-Pueblo Party. So welcome all. And tonight I have, as usual, Bill as my co-host, and I'm gonna let him come on and say hello. And we also have Sister Laurie Kim here from Black Vegfest. She's an educator, biologist, conservationist, abolitionist, naturalist, and healer. She synergizes all of these into Black liberation work from a queer, femme, vegan perspective. And so I'm just going to bring on Brother Bill and let him say what's up. And I'm going to have Sister Laurie Kim come on also and have her, greet everybody. Sister Laurie Kim, Bill's feed went down, so I'm just going to let you introduce yourself. I think I gave you a very brief introduction. Maybe, I don't know if there's something else you want to say to the audience.
Hi. My pronouns are she, her, and my name is Laurie Kim. And yeah, that's pretty much, those things embody who I am. And I'm really excited for this discussion today. Another organization that I organize with is the People's United Front, which the People's Pueblo Party and Black Vegfest are a part of. And that is a beautiful movement, an anti-fascist movement, and a national movement that encompasses organizations from across the country. So that's something I would love to talk more about with y'all today too. So
yeah, I'm sure we'll have enough time. Our topic tonight is talking about the connection between the planet, and the animals. And something that we have as a saying in the People-Pueblo Party is that we believe in common sense politics for the people, the planet, and the animals, because we know that those things are interrelated and interconnected. And I think tonight we'll be able to show people more of what we mean with that. So usually we have a stop COVID section before we go into our main topic, but because the topic is so related to COVID, that we're just going to start. And we have a short video that talks about zoonotic diseases, which shows a very direct relationship between animals and people and pandemics. And so I'm just going to bring that up. And I guess when Brother Bill comes on, we'll be able to introduce him. And I'm just going to mute our mics, because sometimes when I don't do that, we get like a bad feedback. So, and then I'm going to play the short video. It's a very short video, but it's very good and very informative.
We know that the novel coronavirus or the COVID-19 pandemic has brought our planet to a complete halt. Trade and commerce, travel and tourism, even doing mundane things like going to a supermarket or eating out or going to the movies, everything has been suspended. Every time one thinks about this pandemic, one cannot help thinking about the wet markets in Wuhan, China, suspected as the origin of the disease. Was it an infected bat that transferred the disease to someone like a shopkeeper or a customer? Or did an infected bat transmit this disease first to a pangolin from where it jumped to humans? We may not be absolutely certain about the origin of COVID-19, but what we know for a fact is that most human disease-causing pathogens came from animals. And when I say most, I mean over 60% of them. This transference of a disease from an animal to human beings is called zoonosis, and all such diseases collectively are called zoonotic diseases. All recent epidemics have their origin in animals. For example, the extremely fatal Ebola virus, which has killed 11,323 people between 2014 and 2016 in West Africa, was transmitted either from bats or non-human primates. The severe acute respiratory syndrome or the SARS epidemic of 2002-3 was caused by civet cats. And the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome or MERS came from camels. Even the root of influenza or the common flu can be found in birds and pigs. And HIV came from monkeys. The list goes on and on. Yet, zoonotic diseases differ in the way they are transmitted. Dog owners are conscious that their pets need vaccination against rabies. Rabies is spread among humans through a bite of an infected dog. This is called direct transmission. Similarly, influenza, which can be transmitted through air, or SARS, which may have been acquired by meat handlers directly from animals, are examples of direct transmission. Direct transmission is when a human acquires an animal disease straight from the infected animal. In contrast, diseases can also be delivered to humans through an intermediary or a vector. Here, the vector, like a mosquito, is just transporting the pathogen. But the mosquito does not get infected. Instead, it transfers it to a human. The Zika fever is one such example where mosquitoes may have first introduced the virus to humans from monkeys. Or the African sleeping sickness, the microbe of which is transported by the tsetse fly from wild and domesticated animals to infect humans. With COVID-19, the world is again rattled by a strike from a zoonotic disease. And yet, there is very little introspection about why these diseases are so rampant. The only reason for such outbreaks is human activity. Deforestation has led to serious outbreaks of diseases like Ebola, Zika, Nipah, and many others. Ebola is a classic case where scientists suspect that a 2-year-old child playing under bat-infested trees was the trigger for the 2014 Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Similarly, Lyme disease, which infects 30,000 people in the US, has become a major problem because of dwindling population of animals like opossums and chipmunks, which control the population of ticks, the main carrier of the disease. Bad sanitation policies have led to an increase in vector-borne zoonotic diseases like dengue and chikungunya. Then, there is the practice of eating wild animals, some of which are consumed raw. COVID-19 and SARS are the two best examples of viruses spreading through this route. And then we have commercial farming of animals, which has made people more susceptible to diseases like bird flu and swine flu. Overexposure of antibiotics on farm animals has increased antibiotic resistance in disease-causing microbes, creating a silent pandemic across the world. WHO estimates that 700,000 people die every year because of antimicrobial resistance. This includes multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, which was once a disease of zoonotic nature. COVID-19 is only one of the 200 zoonotic diseases we know of. Many more will emerge because of the severe degradation that we have done to the planet's natural environment. Since the beginning of the 20th century, more people have died due to such diseases than any of the wars, including the world wars. Even as the world prays for a COVID-19 breakthrough, the next microbe aiming to conquer the world is waiting around the corner.
That video was very informative. There was a lot there, and I think there's a lot that we need to unpack. Um, I think the whole idea of zoonotic diseases, right? That the people, the planet, and the animals are linked together, right? When people live in overcrowded, unsanitary conditions, it produces diseases. When animals live in crowded, unsanitary situations, it produces diseases. When we destroy our planet, that also produces diseases. And so, a lot of people, when COVID first came out, there was so many conspiracy theories. I mean, I think I spent like the whole summer just trying to debunk conspiracy theories. And there were even, people who we might consider to be revolutionary, spouting what these conspiracy theories were saying. And I kept saying, well, why y'all repeating the garbage that Trump is saying? Um, because a lot of it was exactly the kind of garbage he was saying, but it didn't have his name on it. And so I had a lot of, hard discussions with people about that. And, I even had to cut off some people because I felt like they were repeating garbage that had no research behind it, stuff they had picked up off the internet, these conspiracy theories that could lead people to die. And so, I to me, it was like, I'd rather cut you off than give you a platform for you to repeat garbage that's only going to let more people die. So, I mean, again, there's a lot in there to unpack, but, Sister Laurie Kim, I don't know if you want to give it a shot.
Yeah, actually, I really liked this video, but there's some stuff that's left out, right? And like you said, there is a lot to unpack. There's some things that jumped out at me, you know, that would just be helpful to to highlight. I'm just gonna go real to just the basics first, and then we could just build up and talk, right? So when a lot of us don't necessarily learn this in school, but some of us may remember that humans really are animals, right?
Mhm.
Right. So what kind of animal are we? We're mammals. We have mammary glands that produce milk or not. And that's really one of the main things that makes us mammals, right? And so they started talking about, well, where did this come from? And there's still not like a real general consensus, you know. But there's this always this blaming of wildlife first, right? Oh my gosh, the bats. The bats are just so disease ridden. Well, bats are a great vector, and I'm so glad that they explained what a vector is because that's very important to know. A great uh, catalyst holder of diseases, right? Why would I say great in relation to diseases? Diseases are a natural part of living. They're not really uh, these microbes are not really um, they're not born bad. They're there
Right.
to perform a function,
Right.
and that function is to move uh, through the system,
Hmm.
and that regulates and controls populations. It helps with getting populations from one area to another to recombine DNA and make the population stronger in the long run so that they can fight the next set of diseases that come through, you know? So a lot of people ask me like, why do mosquitoes even exist? They're so horrible,
Mm.
like why is it a thing? Like, well, they're food, and they're a vector for disease, which is really helpful for populations. But what causes issues now is when you put the system through so much stress
Mm.
that there's nowhere for those diseases to go but up. And you know I see you, brother Bill. I see you.
Yeah.
Um,
Bill's trying to get,
so
trying to. I'm figuring, trying to get the visual together there.
yeah,
Like he's
uh,
wrestling a little bit with it.
yeah, we good. So you know, so the first thing to think about is it's very easy for diseases, for microbes, for bacteria, for viruses to move from other between mammals.
Mm.
Very easy. It's very easy for them to move across species that are in close proximity to each other. So when you have things like deforestation, when you have things like a warming climate and a changing climate and a lack of resilience because of deforestation and a lack of resources because they're denied to folks,
Mm.
right? Just basic resources for resilience, like one basic resource is access to clean water,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Access to facilities to grow your own food.
Hmm.
Then what happens is things like this, right? And so there's like a perfect storm for pandemics. um the other thing is that they use some language in this video,
Hmm.
like it kind of stuck in my ear. So one of the species that I have the most affinity with and that I've done the most work with is bat, or not species, but one of the group of species is bats,
Mm.
and that that's really where my passion lies, is working with bats and as well herpetofauna, which is like reptiles, amphibians. But you know the commentator said, um, there was Ebola started with a 2-year-old child playing under bat infested trees.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow, actually, the bats were there in the trees. Like bats have lived alongside humans
Yeah.
for thousands of years and are keystone species in every environment in which they exist. And
Mm.
by a keystone species, that means that if you remove that species, then the whole ecosystem falls apart.
Right. That's the.
They're that important.
It's not a bat infested tree. That's the bat's home.
Exactly, exactly.
That's their
And
home.
that's home for the bat, and that's home
Yeah.
for the child as well.
Right.
So we've always been in this wonderful harmonious relationship, but now you put a situation where there are very few trees,
Right.
right? I was born and raised in Jamaica. Now if you think about my country, my country is called the land of wood and water.
Mm.
Depending on whose list you look at, that my country is either number 5 in the top 5 or the top 10 for deforestation in the entire world.
Wow.
My country that could fit inside several of the states of
Mm.
this country, right? And so when you think about that and think about what people are visiting Jamaica to see.
Mm.
And then think about the fact that Jamaica has 4 species of bats that are endemic to the area, meaning they're only found there.
Mm.
But they're now only found in caves, really. They're mostly found in caves. And they used to be found in trees, but now they're not in trees anymore because there's none.
Mm.
So we're all pressed. Thinking about pangolins. Pangolins can travel far, far distances.
Mm.
Pangolins are also mammals. So, if there was some sort of um spread of a pathogen from a pangolin to a human mammal, it's not a far leap. So
Mm.
people look at that as like, well, this is bad sanitation practices in the way that we process our meat. Or how about the fact that
Mm.
there is no other option?
Mm.
Or the fact that these bad sanitation practices are tripled, if not more so,
Mhm.
across the Western world,
Right.
right? That's the United States, that's Europe, that's North America in general, in factory farming environments.
Mm.
And so when we think about all of these diseases that they mentioned, bird flu, swine flu, MERS,
Right.
SARS, etc.,
Yep.
all of those
Mhm.
came from eating these animals,
Mhm.
not just hanging out,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So we have to really kind of take a step. And when you spoke about conspiracy theories,
Mhm.
one of the things that again, I am not an epidemiologist. I am not a virologist. I
Mm.
am not a doctor. I'm just a biologist, regular, degular old biologist, right? And so, and a lot of so people when this first hit, people kept coming to me and asking me questions. I was like, I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
So I gotta wait for the research, just like you. I
Mm.
might have different access to research now, and I will help you get there,
Mm.
right? But they kept coming to me, telling me like, well, you know when they created it in that lab. And I was like, okay, hold on. So you mean to tell me it's easier for you to
Uh-huh.
believe a plot of several blockbuster movies became reality than the true fact
Yeah.
that I can actually show you proof, pictures, video, you know, documentation worldwide that one, animals are, non-humans. Let's call them what they are, non-humans, right? Because again, we're all animals.
Yes.
Are being mistreated to the point where the brutality level is so high
Mm.
that they cannot come out unscathed.
Mm.
Before death, there's not this happy place. There's blood, there's feces, there's
Yeah.
pus,
Yeah.
there's urine,
There's cannibalism.
there's cannibalism,
Yeah.
there's stress, there's all of these things. That's before they're murdered, right?
Hmm.
For the plate. Now, um, I'm not getting soapboxy on you. I got a point.
Hey, you
Okay.
speaking truth, sister. You speaking truth.
Right.
That's what
You
we want
know,
on the show.
'cause usually when I get there, people get lost. Like, no, listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we have situations like that are real, then think about the people that are caught in that system as well.
Mhm.
They're being crunched under by the wheels of that system as well. Who takes that job?
Mm.
Who is that job even presented to?
Mhm.
Where do these farms exist?
Okay, those are good questions. Now, I got a couple of other videos that are going to help answer that, and we're going to talk. But since Bill has got his video and audio together, Bill, you ain't say welcome to everybody. What's up, man?
I'm sorry. Hey, when I go in the back room, I always have power with my internet. I guess I can't go back there no more. But anyway, welcome. I'm really enjoying what you're saying. I mean, you're really breaking it down for even me, even though I joined in progress. I did see the videos, but it's interesting. So I mean, everybody. I was talking to Mark prior to the show. I think it's an appropriate conversation because you're a vegetarian, right? Lori
I'm
King?
vegan, yeah.
You're
Hmm.
vegan. Mark, you're vegan or vegetarian?
Vegan.
Vegan. Okay, I see it. May the force with you, spar. I'm not. Well, I don't eat meat. All right, I eat my fish. I eat my fruit and my vegetables. So it's interesting because at least we practicing what we preach for the most part. So to that I say, preach on and teach
Okay.
on.
So I'm going to show another short video because the first video talks about the destruction of natural habitat of non-humans, and I really like that. I really like that because humans are animals, and I think that coming from a European perspective, the Europeans have this idea that it's humans against animals against nature, that you have to tame it, you have to control it, you have to make it do what you want it to do. And I think the idea of saying that we're all animals, but they're humans and non-humans, I think is a much better perspective on understanding that we're part of nature. We're a product of nature. And, it's like you can't separate you from what you are in a broader sense. But the next short video we have is an animation. And this is something that works with adults and works with young people because young people need to know the truth about what's happening. And, this video is not perfect by any means, but it is creative in that it takes the movie The Matrix, and instead of being The Matrix, it's The Matrix. And so I think it's something that, older folks, younger folks could really understand if they saw the movie The Matrix. So I'm just going to show that now. And then because it does talk a lot about factory farming, which is the other place where a lot of disease, because the animals are crammed, they make them eat their own feces. They make them eat other animals when they're vegan, basically, or vegetarian, because they do have their mammals. So they have their mother's milk. But I thought it was nice, and it's something that we can educate older people and younger people with. So I'm just gonna mute our mics and then I'm gonna play.
Here you go, Leo.
Leo,
Who are you? And how did you know my name?
I am Muphius, and I know a lot about you. Have you heard of the Matrix?
The Matrix?
Do you want to know what it is?
Okay.
The Matrix is all around you, Leo. It is the story we tell ourselves about where meat and animal products come from. This family farm is a fantasy, Leo. Take the blue pill and stay here in the fantasy. Take the red pill and I'll show you the truth. Welcome to the real world.
Wow! What is this horrible place?
This is a factory farm, Leo. Places like this are where most eggs, milk, and meat come from.
How did this happen?
I'll show you. In the mid-20th century, greedy agriculture corporations began modifying sustainable family farming to maximize their profits at great cost to both humans and animals. Factory farming was born. Animals are packed as closely together as possible. Most never see sunlight, touch ground, or get fresh air. Many can't even turn around. These cruel conditions cause fights and disease amongst the animals. To fix this, the corporate machine began systematic mutilations, practices such as debeaking chickens. And they started adding a constant dosage of antibiotics to their feed just to keep these poor wretches alive. This overuse of antibiotics breeds super strains of resistant disease-causing germs. Every day we get closer to an epidemic that cannot be stopped.
Ew! What's that smell?
12 million pounds of excrement. This pollutes the air and groundwater. That's why communities near factory farms often suffer from high levels of related sicknesses.
Well, it smells like shh.
And what's more, factory farming corporations have been destroying communities and mistreating their workers for decades. Since 1950, over 2 million small hog farms have disappeared. If they continue at this rate, there'll be no real independent family farms left. That is the matrix, Leon. The lie we tell ourselves about where our food comes from. But it's not too late. There is a resistance.
Count me in! So how do we stop him, Morpheus?
We are going to spread the word, but it's you, the consumer, who has the real power. Don't support the factory farming machine. There's a world of alternatives. Click here, and I'll show you what you can do to escape the matrix.
All right. So, I thought that was, very creative. In terms of, hold on.
That's me, Mark.
Okay. Yeah. I thought that was very creative. They took, The Matrix, the movie, and created a cartoon that adults and children can get with. And I think, again, this is packed with a lot of things in it. I mean, the whole capitalist mode of producing food, where you not only do you poison the food with antibiotics and having animals in overcrowded conditions, but you also torture the food that you're going to eat, So on so many levels, factory farming is horrendous. And then you talk about the human cost in all those small farms that were destroyed. And, as we know, Black farmers, have been catching the brunt of this, and it's like, it's like you said, who works in these disease-ridden places with these animals that are being tortured and are sick? It's poor and working class people, especially people of color, and so, these videos are short. They might even be entertaining, but the content of them, there's so much to unpack. So I don't know if you want to speak on it.
Yeah, I thought this was well done, for what it is. And I appreciate you finding it. I'd never seen it before. Um, you know, there's been a lot of little cartoons out there, but this one, packs a lot into this small package. So that's good. One of the things, though, it talks about it shows um the pig friend there who you know saying like, oh, you're on a small farm, like,
Mhm.
you're actually in a factory farm. And you know a lot of times the truth of the matter is that even on a small farm, farmed animals, and I say farmed because you know that is the reality, that the non-humans are being farmed for food. That there's always brutality in that situation. So you know what I like that highlight
Mhm.
of the reality of factory farms,
Yeah.
but we really need to also unpack the truth that when people say, well, it said it's grass fed.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that cow is still slaughtered. You know, or free range eggs. Free range could mean that those chickens are still in by the thousands in a large coop with no windows, or
Right.
they have access to one little patch of scratching ground that other hundreds of chickens have access to, and are they're still male chickens, or you know, are being killed so that, you know, the um the female chickens can be raised. They're still being debeaked. They still are being fed other chickens. They
Right.
still are being starved to produce more eggs, you know. So that reality is still true when you have animals within a system that is not holistic. You know, you can have a system of agriculture that looks like our traditions, right? Our traditional ecological knowledge, and I'm sorry, there's something going on outside, so it's probably loud, but
No, we can't hear it.
there, oh, fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so there's our traditional ecological knowledge that is deep and profound, right? I mean, if we think about it, a lot of us are like, "Oh, I don't know anything about that stuff." You sure? Everybody got a grandma, an auntie, a uncle, or somebody who used to chew up something and wrap it somewhere. Who said, I mean, even the idea that ginger ale fix everything, you know,
Yeah,
that's ginger we're trying to get to, right?
right.
Um, so our blood doesn't ever forget that truth. And so that traditional ecological knowledge
Yeah,
truly is what can save us. I mean, one of the larger questions that you asked, you know, and I'm not trying to jump ahead necessarily, but it's like, what can we do
right.
to save the planet? Is to remember where you are and who you are, you know, um, because we've never lost that knowledge. We just have to remember it. And so things like permaculture, that's not
Right.
news, you know, where people are like, oh, well, that's whiteness and that's colonizer culture. No, it's not actually. They learned from us. Permaculture is a system by which, you know, you use companion cropping, you use a system by which your agriculture is incorporated into the natural
Right.
space, so all the living creatures can move through the system. So, you know, I believe in a farm that looks like a forest,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
let
and
me
I
just, I don't
think
know if
that
you
we
can
could
see it.
win.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you can see it, but there's some comments in the
I
chat.
can't see.
Okay, well, Vicente just got on a little while ago, and he says ginger tea fixes everything.
It's true.
And I know for sure, ginger tea from personal experience and from research is really good for your stomach. And I know that in Washington Heights, Dominican women, they make big batches in a big pot of ginger tea. And because, you know, it's a hot spice, right? Because there are
Hmm.
mild spices and hot spices that it, you know, as you're walking and shopping and stuff, you drinking some ginger tea, it'll warm you up, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So also, let me just bring on uh, Esperanza, who's also watching. Says she says powerful. She really likes you know, how you're presenting the information and also the videos that we showed tonight. Also, Vicente also thought that the video was funny. So
Yeah.
so that's good because one of the things we did. We had a show on COVID, and what we did was we showed people's creativity through their art, through
Mm.
their music, you know, to stop COVID. And so, you know, when we do popular political education, I know you know this for sure, there's always good to mix different mediums and different resources to see which one is going to grab people and attract people. So, and also, Vicente has a comment that says, and you can make a decent living going organic, you know.
Yeah.
And I know because you know, I was living in southern Pennsylvania, Lancaster, and Espy was telling me how she gets her a lot of her fruits and vegetables from that area because a lot of the Amish in that area
Mm.
they grow organic food. But also, and Christine says, ginger and garlic for anything that ails you. So traditional medicines, right? That people know work because they've used them. And then Brother Omawali says, my sis, Laurie Kim Alexander. So, and so he's here watching, supporting. And that's why I love doing the show live, because folks can actually participate through the chat. So, Sister Laurie Kim, what I wanted to do at this point was, it's 8:41. I wanted to show the last video because, like, we learned about zoonotic diseases. We learned how a lot of diseases spread from non-humans to humans. We learned about the devastation of the environment and how that affects the spread of diseases. And then the next video showed us about factory farming, and on so many levels really spoke to what's happening. And then we have a third clip, which is also very short, which is from this movie on Netflix. It's called What the Health. And What the Health really breaks down a lot of what you're talking about in terms of not just the horrors of factory farming, but also the horrors and the torture of animals, and how we have to look beyond eating animals as in order to have a healthier, for it to be healthier for people, the planet, and the animals. So I'm just going to show this last video, and then we can continue our conversation.
If you lived near a swine spray field, not even the CAFO, but the waste disposal field, you were 3 times more likely to have a MRSA infection. You can't see how it impacts the average person's life in Duplin County, North Carolina, and not be a little upset about it.
From an environmental standpoint, from a community standpoint, from all other aspects, North Carolina, we're in a state of emergency. We've already had bouts of swine flu, or H1N1 as they prefer to refer to it. That particular swine flu incident was originated on a farm here in North Carolina. There's approximately the same number of hogs in North Carolina as there are people. Between 8 to 10 times the amount of feces is produced by a hog, an adult hog, as compared to an adult human.
10 million pigs in North Carolina produce the waste equal to 100 million humans. This is the equivalent of the entire U.S. eastern seaboard flushing their toilets into North Carolina, but there is no waste treatment. The pigs' waste falls through slats in the floors of the sheds they are forced to live in. It is then pumped into giant waste pits, which leach into rivers and streams, and is pumped out unfiltered onto fields, further polluting the environment and neighboring health.
When you go back and you look at where these hog facilities are located, there's a disproportionate number of them that are located near communities of color, low-income communities. It is definitely a human rights issue.
My sister, she have asthma, and her brother, he have asthma. He's 3, and we don't know what she might have. I have asthma, I have sinus, I have sarcoidosis, that's the bacteria, and I have a pacemaker, which is 6 sinus syndrome. But mostly everybody in this neighborhood got asthma or either cancer. My neighbor there died from cancer probably just last year. My nephew down the street, he's got cancer. He's in terminal cancer, stage 4. Not a smoker, not a drinker. And it's not in his lungs. It's in his lymph nodes. But see, if you live here and saw the way they do, you wouldn't eat no pork. Well, I don't eat bacon because I know where it comes from. When they die, they go into a box and they decompose because they swell especially from heat. A truck come and pick them up, take them to the processing plant in Rose Hill, ground them up into feed, and feed it back to the hogs. If I come out this door, if he's spraying there, it's gonna come in my face. It hit you right in the face. You smell like something that you have never smelled before. It smells worse than a dead body. It's the family graveyard. I have my grandmother out there, my sisters, my brothers. When we go to the funeral, he used to spray.
During the funeral?
During the funeral, yes. During the funeral. Yeah, he spray. And when the people come, everybody be closing their nose up, saying how it stink. They can want to have a cookout on Sunday, he'll spray.
Do you think he does it on purpose?
I think so. Because he just sprays Sunday. He always sprays Sunday. And in most of these area, hog houses and turkey house is in the black area or the Hispanic area. It's either or.
Do you think it's also a civil rights issue?
Yes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
There have been times in the past that I have gotten ready on the Sunday, gotten ready to go to church and come out, and the smell was so strong that I had to go back and regroup because it got in my clothes and I just couldn't go to church smelling like hogs, you know. I just couldn't do it. So I don't think the government cares. They care more about corporations than do people, individuals.
And they're going to keep on. They're going to put more chickens in this state. This is the feast season. You're in capital of the world right here in North Carolina. My state. Look, there's a blue line stream right here come into my property almost, and the Contentney Creek right here. I've seen that blue line stream now filled with feces and urine from that hog pen, and they can say, well, we feed the world. They're not interested in feeding the world. They're interested in making money. You take the money away from them, they'll let the folks starve. Because if you want to feed the world, you can feed the world with more corn, using corn and wheat and stuff like that, and you can meat. Meat is a luxury item. When we're doing things that hurt other people, we're wrong. But a lot of good people will sit there and eat bacon knowing that it's causing someone else to be very unhappy.
I woke up the next morning to find the Burden River had experienced another massive fish kill from the pollution running off hog farms. Tens of thousands of fish were washing up on shore. All this talk about health, I realized that I was only focused on personal health. But health started to mean so much more to me. It was about health of my family and our communities. I couldn't under good conscience support an industry that I knew was harming others. Pollution from animal agriculture isn't just an issue in North Carolina though. Raising animals for food produces more greenhouse gases than the entire transportation sector. It is a leading cause of rainforest destruction, species extinction.
Yeah, let me just, I'm going to put up one of the comments. Says, Brother Omawale says, time to give up meat. We owe the factory farming industry nothing. Let's stop sustaining this industry. We can eat and live better. And, you know, that's one of the reasons I like that movie, What the Health. It's a lot longer. I just chose this particular piece because, honestly, if you want to feed more people, you grow, like he said, you grow corn, you grow wheat, you grow soy, you grow, you know, there's so many things that you can grow that are actually good for the soil, you know, with crop rotation. And, you know, sometimes people say, well, cow manure is good for the soil. And it is to a certain degree, because the problem is that if you use too much cow manure and cow urine, what you wind up doing is making the soil toxic. And a lot of times, like there'll be a recall on like romaine lettuce, and you're like, well, why is romaine lettuce making us sick? It's because that water, that urine that they're spraying in those fields there in North Carolina, they wind up spraying that on the vegetables. And so you get vegetables contaminated with feces. And so, you know, these factory farming meat industry are, you know, not only torturing and poisoning the animals that people eat, but they're also poisoning and putting all kinds of diseases on our vegetables. So really, the meat industry is poisoning us, but to their benefit, because they're making so much money. And also, let me share what Esperanza says. We are and have been in a state of emergency. I've been a vegan for the last 50 years, and the situation is getting worse. Situation is getting worse. So I'm going to bring it back to you, Sister Laurie Kim, because I think what you've been saying is leading us to, you know, watch these short videos, but also, you know, when people have time at home, you know, there's a thing called Cowspiracy. There's a thing called What the Health. There's a lot of movies out there, documentaries that have research and data and people dedicating their lives to it. And it's readily accessible. You know, there's another book by Dr. Greger called How Not to Diet, right? And How to Survive a Pandemic. And, you know, this is out there and it's available. And, you know, again, for people who don't have time or have difficulty reading. My son has dyslexia, he has difficulty reading, but there's audiobooks so that we can learn from sound research and don't have to rely on, conspiracy theories or anything like that, So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I'll bring it back to you and then we can share some more of what's going on in the chat.
Okay. All right, I'm going to try and keep this brief. I have three things to say. Okay. One, what was depicted in this video, um, and this is the video that you shared with me earlier, right?
Mhm.
On pigs and okay.
Oh, this one,
So
yeah, this is the one where they interview the grandma with the baby.
yeah.
And you know what? When that truck went by, that baby got shook. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't stop thinking about that in terms of this video, because those factory farm companies have no regard for the people that live in that area, none whatsoever.
No. And these are also the people that work in the factory farms, right? So not only do we not have any regard, I mean so the first thing I'm going to say, this is a classic example of environmental racism. Um, so folks may have heard this term because it's been around for a long time, and it's been around for a long time because it's real. Environmental racism, exists when people are relegated to areas or, um, policy zones areas for toxic, uh, toxic companies, toxic activities to happen near residences,
Right.
and what always is just almost 100% of the case is that this is folks who are considered low income, lower socioeconomic standing, um, and this is almost always Black and brown people. And by brown, I mean Latinx, Latino people. And quite often, folks who have immigrated to this country, folks who most of the workers in factory farms, and that includes monoculture farms. Monoculture means that you have one crop growing, and that's it. And that's where you lose your soil. No matter what you're growing, you're not going to have healthy soil if you are growing the same thing that's not going to be able to put things back into it. That's why you're going to have overuse of pesticides, herbicides, as well as you know um, fertilizers. So in any case, this is just a classic example. The woman mentioned cancer. People would never think that you can get cancer from being around excess of feces and urine. But yes, you absolutely can, because there are several different ways that cancer exists. But what cancer means is that your cells just lose it and they just keep growing,
Right.
and something triggers them to change internally. Um, and it's usually an environmental stressor. And there's also stress. You mentioned that baby was shook. You know what it must sound like? Not just the largeness of that vehicle, but the death coming from that vehicle. The abject pain. If anyone has been near a truck like that carrying live animals,
Yeah.
and you've probably looked away, and so that's a reality for people every day. That's not just North Carolina. You see that in Florida, um in Immokalee. Immokalee is an area where it's mostly Mexican folks, but people from my country too. This country is actually giving people's visas to come and work on the farm, but they're not getting paid. They're not getting paid for that. And then they can't really leave the farm because they're working 14 hours, 16 hours, and then they don't have any money. So where they're going to go and how they're going to get there? And then they're in barracks with no heat. I mean, so these are the depths of the situation.
Yeah.
So that's that's one. And I know we want to get to the chat, so I'm trying to say
Yeah.
this quick.
We said they just
Um,
put a big comment twice. So I think he's trying to tell me to put it up at some point.
okay, Vincente, let me stop talking. What you gotta say?
All right. Well, see, this is the thing, right? There are two books that I commonly recommend on this show, and that's How to Survive a Pandemic by Dr. Michael Greger.
Uh-huh.
And the other one is America the Farewell Tour. And in America the Farewell Tour, Chris Hedges is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He was a war correspondent for the New York Times. And so he's been around to a lot of countries that had a collapse in terms of the economic and political system. And so he kind of put together a mental checklist of what happens before this collapse. And he starts to talk about the decay of the cities, the cannibalism of the elites, where all they think about is themselves and their wealth. The wealth gap increases. And so, there's mention in the chat about the FDA. The FDA is controlled by agribusiness, big animal factory farm companies. And so they run the regulations in this country. And so Vicente in the chat, he raises this issue of, if you go to supermarkets around our neighborhood, you can't find good organic vegetables and fruit. We have to go to Whole Foods and such to get organic foods, and all the produce in the Northeast have to go through the Bronx Central Market. So, and this is characteristic of an empire in decay. And so, a lot of us activists, we can't keep doing what we're accustomed to doing. We have to organize on a grassroots basis. And this is why I wanted to have someone from Black Vegfest here, because we have to go into the communities. We have to go into the workplaces. And when schools open up, we got to organize in the schools because this whole society needs to be changed. This society is headed to the dung heap. It's going down the toilet, and it's going to kill as many life forms, is going to kill the environment as much as it can. And so us getting the right information, debunking conspiracy theories and getting to the right information, and then organizing with that right information is what's going to be able to save the largest number of lives. So let me see. There's also, we have someone new here, Kenneth Sutherland, and he has a statement. Says, I saw years ago how the Purdue farms in either South or North Carolina was so dangerous. A lot of the workers were injured and killed. Many workers were poor and Black living in the area. Then after that report, there was another about how these, hold on a second, how these same farms has so much waste runoff. It would go into the same communities where the same people that work there live. So you got sick working in the plant, and then you got double sick when you went home.
Right. And that's my point. The other reality is that you mentioned grassroots organizing. So that leads me really to the next point. One of the biggest, or the biggest protests in modern history happened in India over the past few days. Over 250 million farmers went into New Delhi to tell the government to shove their agriculture bill. And the agriculture bill is like the epitome of neoliberalism and neocolonialism, where it basically gives money to the agribusiness to say, oh, you could come in and take folks' land. You can not pay them properly. You can also sell them only GMO seeds, and then they don't have any recourse. And so we could go down a whole rabbit hole with GMO seeds. But there's another movie that you should see called Seed: The Untold Story. It's very good. And one thing that we don't realize is, there's a lot more than health concerns when it comes to GMOs. There's a concern that there is no way that you can save a GMO seed for the next year. So that farmer got to re-up and re-up and re-up with what money? And then when agribusiness comes in and says you have to only come in and tell them that now you can only have this one crop. Oh, but I've been growing these three crops and I sell this at market and I sell this here. Nope, you can only sell this to X person.
Right.
You can't sell it within your country. The entire Caribbean, I think that half of the people in the chat probably know what I'm talking about. If you're from DR, if you're from PR, if you're from Jamaica, if you're from Barbados, if you're from Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, you know. If you come from Costa Rica, Panama, you know what is happening where we don't even get our own food most of the time because of you know things like the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, you know, several different non-governmental organizations that act like government and are sanctioned by government. You know,
Right.
so these are the things that you know when we talk about. There's a lot of talk now about decolonizing ourselves. Well, the real way to do that is to trace your food. And some of us don't have that luxury. All we got is a bodega. To Vincente's point, all we have is a bodega. Something like 85% of the food around that has been found in New York City in studies of New York City schools is processed food, because all we got is bodegas, the little pizza guy, you know, um,
Yeah.
things like that. And so you can shop healthy in a bodega now. You can find a thing, but it's gonna be difficult and it's gonna cost you.
Yeah.
So
That's true. But let me share. Brother Mwali says, and he's echoing what you're saying about India. Says, look at what's happening in India. 300 million farmers protest. We need to start rising up to address our ecosystem and food system. That needs to be acknowledged. And he wants folks to visit www.blackfetch.org or Blackfetch group on Facebook. And I think he forgot to mention Instagram.
and
Right?
Instagram,
Yeah,
yes.
and I have it on the screen. So if anybody wants to see it, they can absolutely see it here. And I think we're at the 9:03. I think, but before we go, I did want to share a couple of more comments, and then I want to talk about how folks can connect with the People's United Front in our virtual conference on March 20th. So let me just share a couple of more things here. And Vicente says, this is why I'm trying to get my farm. He wants to get a farm.
Yes.
And then Robert says, because Robert is a teacher, it's all processed food in the Department of Education. That's true. And I spoke to the health person at my school. I said, giving kids cold cuts is like giving them cigarettes, and, and so I had to have a battle about that. But before we end tonight, I just want to ask you if you could tell our audience a little bit about the People's United Front and the conference coming up on March 20th.
Yeah, absolutely. So the People's United Front, as I was saying before, we are a collective of different organizations, individuals, movement workers, revolutionaries, looking to smash fascism in all its forms. And so we talk about that a lot, but what does that actually mean? So this virtual conference is an opportunity for us to have a conversation about really, and really learn from the folks who've been on boots on the ground doing this work, and find out the answers to what is fascism, the ways it shows up in the world, and I'll quote Bell Hooks, who talks about, I always will quote Bell Hooks till I die, who talks about white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist patriarchy. And all of those things have one thing underlying, which is a structure based on fascism. And so the conference is to deconstruct that and then come up with actions ways to combat that at home across the nation. And Black Vegfest is really excited. We're to be a part of this because that's the basis of our work. That's the basis of Black liberation. Um, and I'll just quickly say that we are actually going to be doing stuff within schools as well, working to get healthier vegan options for New York City school children. So, and that's basic anti-fascism right there. But that's the program for the virtual program. It's an all-day event, so you jump in, you jump out as you need to.
Saturday, March 20th. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was talking to Brother Larry today about dedicating at least one of the breakout groups to young people, in particular teenagers, who want to participate. And so as we do our planning, we're going to meet on the 21st to plan. I think we need to make a space for them, because they do need their own space, and they need facilitators who are not going to lord it over them or preach to them, but who are going to include them, give them information, and then help them to shape that into what they want to do. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I love that idea. So I'm glad we're doing that. Okay.
So I also promised Brother Robert that I would mention today that it looks like the Philadelphia teachers might be going on strike, because the city of Philadelphia wants them to go into the schools, and in schools where ventilation systems are broken, they're not working. And so we do have to give a big shout out to the teachers in Philly, and give them support, and those in the Philly area, help them organize that. And Sister Laurie Kim, before we wrap it up tonight, do you want to give us the last few words?
Sure. I would like to remind us again that to remember where you are, and that there's no separating you from the environment. You have always been a part of the environment. You are a product of the environment. And it all comes back to plants. We are here because of plants. And if you are in a space where plants can't live, you're not long for that space either. So find ways to expand that. Lead with the expectation to win, because we will win.
All right, thank you. So I will see you sooner, but definitely on Saturday, March 20th for our virtual National Grassroots Conference, anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-patriarchy, anti-fascism, and pro-life, pro-people, pro-environment, pro-humans, pro-non-humans. So on that note, all power to the people.
All power to the people.